In this lesson, we're talking all about how to live more in sync with your cycle. And so the benefits of this is that it really helps to promote healthy hormones and menstrual cycles. It also reduces stress and cortisol levels in your body. It increases fertility, promotes a healthy body weight. It can also reduce the amount of breakouts or headaches and PMS symptoms that you're experiencing. It also just brings a lot of awareness and connection back to your body and really allows for more reasoning and understanding of what your body is doing and how it's feeling. And so this allows you to live more in alignment with your changing needs as a woman. And it also gives you just like a baseline to follow for nutrition, exercise, and your mentality throughout your cycle. And so it really just like up levels your entire wellness. And so I just want to note that these recommendations are definitely like next level, and they're definitely not necessary to follow strictly for really good health or really good hormone health, but they can be very, very helpful too. And so they should be taken with just a light approach and incorporated in a way that feels fitting for you. And so out of this entire lesson, I just want you to focus on the key tip of it being summed up into one question to ask yourself daily. And that is, what kind of blank would feel good for me today? So what kind of exercise would feel good for me today? What kind of self-care would feel good for me today? What kind of food, etc. And so just by doing this, you are staying mindful, you're staying connected to yourself, which in itself is living in sync. And so we're going to talk about food, we're going to talk about exercise and mindset for each phase, and you're going to see how they kind of fluctuate and change as your cycle changes too, and how those are correlated. And so we're going to go through the different phases, but the first phase that we're going to start with is the menstrual phase, and we're going to talk about food first. And so when you think about the menstrual phase, I want you to relate this to different seasons. So this one in particular, it's going to be the winter season. And so we can think about food-wise, we really want to be consuming more warming and easy to digest foods. We can also focus on nourishing foods that support our bleed and begin to replenish nutrients for the next phase, which is follicular phase. And in terms of different nutrients that you can focus on that would be really beneficial to support this phase of your cycle are things like iron. And so this is really helpful because it starts to replenish blood levels, and you can get this from beef, you can get it from organ meats, beets are really good, and any kind of like dark leafy greens are going to be really high in iron. Another nutrient that you can focus on during this time is magnesium. And so magnesium, again, is known as the anti-stress mineral. And so that could be for mental stress. It could be also for physical stressors or tension more so. And so magnesium really helps to reduce cramps and promotes relaxation. And so that's going to be really helpful during your period. And so just example of some foods are hemp seeds are really high in magnesium, and same with pumpkin seeds too. And so you can look up different foods that are high in all of these nutrients, but I just wanted to give you a couple examples. The third nutrient that you can focus on is omega-3. And so this is just a healthy fat that helps to reduce pain, and it also supports mental health too. So any kind of like increased anxiety or mood fluctuations during your cycle, during your period, this will really help with that too. So these are things like flax seeds or the oil, as well as chia seeds. Those are all really high in omega-3. There's obviously more foods, but those ones are good to focus on. And then also like detoxing and just nourishing foods in other ways. And so this helps to support your body's process. And so you can think about like spirulina when we talked about that in the detox lesson. or cruciferous veggies. And so remember, those are the ones like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, even spinach, things like that will be really good to help detox your body during that phase. And so lastly, too, more warming foods, like I mentioned, this really helps to promote blood circulation, which is really important during your period. And so things that you can focus on are things like soups or like mashed veggies, bone broth. Ginger is also really good to reduce pain and cramping, as well as like any kind of herbal teas, especially chamomile and lavender. Those are really relaxing, both mentally and physically, for any kind of cramps. So those are some foods that you can focus on during your menstrual phase. And now we're gonna stick with menstrual phase, but we're gonna go more so into exercise and what that kind of looks like and how you can support your body the best with movement in this phase of your cycle when you do have your period. And so again, we're gonna relate it back to winter. And so this we can kind of think of as like our lowest energy. Like things are usually a bit slower. We're kind of more so chilling at home, that kind of thing. And so, in this phase, this is a time that is essential for rest and extra sleep and kind of like that hibernation vibe. And so I really encourage you to do only things like walks or restorative yoga or yin yoga, or even like stretching, that kind of thing. And honestly, just like full out rest. Like you don't have to do any kind of exercise during this time. And I personally notice huge differences when I'm just taking it easy during this time. It's really a time to just like recover and rest, and spending extra energy out into exercise. It's going to make it really hard for your body to use that energy for this phase of your cycle. And so, you have full permission to just rest during this. And I highly encourage you that you do. And if you don't, then choose really low intensity, like slow exercise. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the mindset or like mentality part of this phase. And so again, winter is very like to ourselves vibe, like self-focused, that kind of thing. And so during this phase, some feelings that can come up are like just more like feminine feelings, emotion, being sensitive. Also, you're more likely to be intuitive at this time, just like feeling other people's energy or just like knowing things, that kind of thing. Like I said, very self-connected, wanting to release. So obviously this can be physically with our period, but also like belief-wise or emotion-wise, those kinds of things. Your body is all just wanting to like let go of the old. And so also wanting solitude too. And so these are things that are really important to honor during this time, because it's really just what your body is craving. And so if you don't want to go out with friends at this time, or you just want to do things by yourself, then that's completely okay. And it's actually really, really normal and healthy to feel that way during your period. And so some actions that you can think of things like cuddles, meditation, connection to nature is going to be really supportive. Singing if you feel like it, listening, crying, and again, letting go of past emotions and beliefs. So you can think about like your body almost like detoxing and just like letting go physically, emotionally, mentally, everything like that. And just be. You don't have to do anything, just really focus on yourself and just be. Also, it's really common, I wanted to put in this note too, that you might experience looser bowel movements at this time. And again, like I said, this is because your body is detoxing and just like cleansing as a whole in every physical way, but also mentally, emotionally, that kind of thing. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the follicular phase. So this is the phase that's right after your period ends. the phase before your ovulatory phase. And so we're going to talk about food first, and then we're going to go through the rest, just like we did for the menstrual phase. And so when we think about the follicular phase, we can think about this being like the spring. So again, relating it to different seasons of life. The follicular phase in our cycle can be related to spring. And so when we think about spring in terms of food, we can think about fresh foods, very nutrient-dense foods that support things like estrogen production, building a healthy egg, starting to build that egg for when we do ovulate in a while, and also encouraging ovulation prep. And so some nutrients that you can focus on are things like phytoestrogens. So essentially this helps to build up estrogen in your body. They do come from plants, but they're just supportive in estrogen production. And that's going to be really important in this phase so that, again, we can, ovulation can be triggered. And even before that, the egg can start to grow. And so these really help to balance estrogen levels. So they can raise estrogen levels, but some people say too that they help to remove excess estrogen. So they're really just like estrogen balancing. And these are things like ground flax seeds and sprouts too. So this could be like broccoli sprouts or any of those kinds. And you can also focus on fresh foods, again, thinking spring. And so this allows you to detox excess hormones and build new nutrients for estrogen too. And so these could be things like leafy greens and citrus foods, so like orange, lemon, lime, grapefruit, that kind of thing. And then also another nutrient is vitamin C. And so this is going to be really helpful for liver support. Remember how important our liver is for our hormone health because it relates so much to detox and metabolizing hormones. And so we really want to support our liver. And same with building cervical fluid as well, because as we lead up to ovulation, that's going to be really important in order to be able to conceive. And so vitamin C foods like carrots, peppers, yams, really anything orange or like red in color is often high in vitamin C. So that's how you can measure it that way. And then another nutrient, so just like healthy fats. So these really help to build hormones, build our sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. And also the egg too. And so you can think of foods like avocado, walnuts, eggs, and then protein. So again, this helps to build hormones and it also helps to build up your uterine lining. So remember in the follicular phase, this is really when our uterine lining is starting to build up, all the nutrients are coming together. It's starting to be a really healthy space because our body knows that an egg is going to ovulate and it's actually starting to anticipate that it's going to be fertilized and we're going to conceive. And once that egg is fertilized, it's implanted on the uterine lining and that's what nourishes the egg. And so the uterine lining is actually just prepping for it. And so one of the key nutrients for that is eating enough protein. And of course, chicken, fish, that kind of thing. Another nutrient is zinc. And so zinc supports fertility really, really well in both women and men. And so if you're having a hard time conceiving, I highly recommend that you can focus on zinc foods. And the foods that I find are the highest in zinc are things like pumpkin seeds, as well as shrimp is really high in zinc too. So this is going to be very beneficial for fertility in both men and women. You can also focus the last one on selenium. And so this is a mineral that's really essential for our thyroid gland, which summed up is really essential for all the different functions and like metabolism in our body. And so that's going to include things like ovulation and fertility, cycle support, that kind of thing. And so if our menstrual phase is off, usually it has something to do with like our thyroid gland being either over or under active. And so selenium is the top nutrient that gland needs to function really well. And so the highest food source that selenium is in is Brazil nuts. And you actually like, Brazil nuts are super high in selenium. So even if you eat like 2 or 3 in a day, that's like over your daily amount that you need. So if you want to buy those and just have like a couple a day, that would be so supportive for your cycle and fertility, that kind of thing. And then follicular phase in terms of exercise. So again, we're thinking spring. So spring, we can kind of think of like, okay, we're coming out of winter and our energy is starting to rise. And so this is also a time for new beginnings too. So it's a great time to try something new for movement, maybe a different type of class, and just like explore into any kind of excitement that you're having around that. So like I mentioned, new workout class, a nature hike is really, really good and supportive to, you know, follow that excitement and the exploration part of it. Dancing is really good. Cardio, flow yoga is all going to be really supportive during this phase of your cycle. And then lastly, we'll go over the mindset of your follicular phase. And so again, spring equals new beginnings. So this could be physically, but also very much mentally too. And so you might be feeling curious, you might be feeling mentally clear, you might be feeling inspired and motivated. And so some actions that you can use on those feelings are things like beginning a project, learning a new skill, planning, an adventure or a trip, adventuring somewhere, maybe outside, challenging as well. So asking questions, even like your own beliefs, those kinds of things, like just kind of like digging into it a little bit more, strategizing too, as well as setting new intentions. So intentions going into the month or going into your cycle, that kind of thing. And so, for me, I always feel very motivated. I feel like I want to plan things. So for example, maybe I would want to plan a program or something like that. And so this is maybe the time where I feel the most inspired to do that. And so I'm going to like lay it all out and plan it, but not necessarily take action on it yet, which we're going to get to in ovulatory phase. So you get the idea and just like the vibe around this of just like new beginnings, starting to plan, but not actually, taking action quite yet. And so we are going to move into the ovulatory phase. So this is kind of like maybe the third phase of your cycle. And this is when ovulation happens, when you're fertile, when you can conceive, that kind of thing. And so let's talk about food first. And so when we talk about the ovulatory phase, again, relating it to a different season of life, this one's going to be really hand in hand with summer. And so in terms of food in the summer, we can think of more cooling foods. That's usually what we crave. It's hot outside. We don't want to be necessarily like eating soup and things like that. We just don't crave it as much, probably. And so these are really going to be foods that increase libido, support ovulation to happen, to make sure that it does happen. They're going to help to detox estrogen, because remember, the first phases of our cycle, that's when estrogen is the highest and that's when it's dominant. But then again, moving into the second half of your cycle, we really want progesterone to be more dominant. And so it's important that estrogen kind of backs off a bit so that progesterone can take over the show for either pregnancy or menstruation. And so this is why it's important to detox estrogen. And these are foods also that help to balance hormone changes too. And so we can look at foods like cruciferous veggies, again, so supporting estrogen detox. These are things like broccoli, cabbage, kale, that kind of thing. Antioxidants are going to be really good to reduce inflammation and any cortisol, so like stress hormone, and also balance hormones. So these are things like any kind of berries, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, as well as pecans are really high in estrogen, in antioxidants. And then also another food is just like gut supporting foods. And so these help to replenish your microbiome. So fermented foods like sauerkraut and prebiotics like asparagus are going to be really helpful this way. And then healthy fats. So healthy fats help to support fertility. And so these are things can be found in almonds, avocado, and wild-caught salmon, those kinds of things. And then aphrodisiacs. So these are the ones that increase libido. So maca powder is really good for this. So it's kind of just like a root powder that you can mix into smoothies, baking, or like which way that you want to do it. You can get it in capsules or like supplement form too. Cacao, so like chocolate, is really good for this, as well as strawberries. So we're kind of getting this like Valentine's Day vibe, and this is why strawberries with chocolate help to increase libido. As well as ginger, cinnamon, and cayenne pepper too. So all of those are known for their aphrodisiac properties, and it can be really supportive for your ovulatory phase too. Okay, and so we will go into the exercise portion of your ovulatory phase. And so again, we're thinking about summer. And this is really when we're having peak energy levels. The highest energy levels, we're probably going out and about, getting stuff done, being more active, especially compared to winter. And so take advantage of the high energy level during this phase of your cycle. Energy level as well as your strength and your endurance too. So all of this is just going to be elevated during this time. And this is why it's really supportive, but you'll also naturally find yourself going towards more HIIT classes, weightlifting, power yoga, spin classes, fast-paced dance. So kind of like more into those higher energy, higher intensity exercises. And that will be really beneficial for you to do. And also to, taking advantage of the high level of energy that you have, especially with weightlifting. And so I personally found when I started to, lay off the weightlifting, especially during my period and kind of like more beginning of my cycle, and then waited it out until mid-cycle, kind of around where I was maybe ovulating, or at least felt high energy, I actually started to get way better results with that because I was working with my body's energy. If I was starting to do the weightlifting during my period when I didn't really feel like it, I didn't have enough energy for it, that's actually going to cause more internal stress or cortisol in my body. And that's going to lead to more hormonal imbalances or even like contribute to weight gain instead of building muscle and losing weight. And so this can be really interesting to play with, and you'll probably notice like really good results with this and just more of like a balanced, healthy body weight that feels really good for you. And then lastly, for the ovulatory phase, we are going to go into mindset stuff. So again, thinking about the summer. So thinking about like fiery, fierce energy. And so, You can notice feelings like being energized, being a lot more extroverted, especially compared to your period. Like, you're probably going to be more inwardly focused and introverted. Whereas during this phase, you're like, your energy is ready to project out. You're feeling really good. You're feeling confident, outgoing, happy. You'll probably feel more sexy during this time. More dominant energy, almost into the like empowered masculine energy of doing things, getting stuff done, like being very outgoing and confident, those kinds of things. And so some actions that you can take on these feelings are things like connecting with others, connecting with family, connecting with friends, connecting with new partners, those kinds of things, initiating things and producing or launching. So again, going back to like the planning that we were doing in the follicular phase, now we're like ready to actually launch that program. We're actually ready to take action on whatever we've been planning. And so that can feel really good during this phase. Communicating too. You'll probably feel more confident and just, you know, ready to have the conversations that you need to, those kinds of things. Again, that's going into speaking your truth. You probably feel more so like standing up for yourself, maybe for other people, socializing, dating. This is a really good time to go on dates because of your mood, but also because of your energy. You know, typically during ovulatory phase, your skin is going to look more glowy, and just men can find you more attractive during this phase. And especially because of like the hormones or pheromones that we put off, men can actually be more attracted to you, and not even really realize it because of that energy or because of that like innate quality that we have to put off that energy. And so this is a really good time to date. Flirting too, obviously having sex, and conceiving too. So this, you know, in the ovulatory phase, that's when you are fertile and you have ovulated. And so this is the time that if you do want to get pregnant, this is the time that you need to be conceiving. Okay, and before we go to the last phase, I really just want to put in this like libido note. And so midpoint in your cycle, when your hormones are spiked and ovulation is occurring, the phase that we just went through, the ovulatory phase, will normally be when your libido is the highest. And so commonly, this is a handful of days prior to ovulation, so like leading up to ovulation, all the way through it to a few days after ovulation. So maybe a span of like 7 days in your entire cycle. So, you know, the average cycle is around 28. So really only 7 days of those 28-day cycle, you might be feeling like your highest libido. And so on the flip side, it's common that earlier in your cycle, as well as later days in your cycle, so right after your period and then right like before your period, kind of in those phases, it's common that your desire may drop significantly. And that's totally okay. That's totally normal and actually really healthy. And so I just want you to know that, you know, don't feel, you know, like something's wrong if your libido isn't always there, because it's very common and normal that it starts to fluctuate throughout your cycle. And so this is also something that you can start to become aware of to see how this fluctuates for you. So if this does fluctuate, I just want you to know that it is important to honor your body and your true desires during this flowing cycle. So if you don't feel like having sex or it's not there, then that's totally okay. And I just want you to honor that. So lastly, we're going to go into the luteal phase. And so we'll talk about food that is supportive for this phase. So again, relating it to the seasons of life, your luteal phase can be connected to the season of fall. And so when we think about fall, we can think about more warming foods. We're starting to move away from summer, gonna be moving into winter. So more in this warming foods. And so these are comforting foods that support progesterone levels. Again, progesterone levels need to be more dominant in the second half of your cycle. And so it's going to help to support that, as well as supporting increased metabolism. Our metabolism also increases during this time in our cycle. And so this is because our body temperature also increases in order to hold on to that egg and go through with conceiving. And so because of that, our metabolism can be higher. And so we're going to talk about how to use food to support that. And also preparing our body for less PMS and a healthy menstruation when we get to that point into the winter or menstrual phase of our cycle. And so some nutrients that you can focus on are things like magnesium. And again, this is going to be really helpful for lessening cramps, lessening anxiety, and really making sure that you get a good sleep, so lessening insomnia. And so these can be foods like cacao, almonds, and leafy greens. And then also focusing on starchy vegetables. And so this is going to really help to support and fuel that increase in metabolism. So these are things like sweet potato or squash are really good to focus on. And I just want you to know too that it is very normal to feel more hungry or really hungry during this phase. And especially leading up to your period, like a few days before your period, you might feel like you could just eat so much more food. And that's completely okay. And I want you to listen to that, connect to your body, and honor that, because it's essentially prepping for winter or hibernation phase. And it's also wanting to get all of those good nutrients in order to produce enough energy to take you through your period. And so this is really like building up in order to have a healthy period too. And so more over that, you can focus on foods that are warming. And so just to comfort your body too. So things like stew, curry, stir fries, spices like cinnamon, turmeric, and black pepper. And same with herbal tea too, especially red raspberry and fennel. Those are really good to reduce any kind of PMS symptoms leading up to your period. And then diuretics too. So different foods have more diuretic properties. And essentially this helps to eliminate excess water retention in your body. And so this can be really helpful for when you're feeling bloated or you're having like breast tenderness, again, any kind of like water retention. And so these are foods like cucumber, celery, parsley, and dandelion products too. So like dandelion tea. And so this is going to be really helpful to help your body let go of that excess water and reduce those symptoms. And lastly, you can focus on vitamin B6 specifically. So if you're taking a B complex vitamin, this will already be in there. But B6 specifically is shown to reduce PMS symptoms. And so you can find this in things like chicken, eggs, and bananas. Those are all sources of vitamin B6. Okay, and then moving into exercise for this phase of your cycle, again, thinking about fall, so that high energy peak that we had in our ovulatory phase now is starting to wean out and lower. And so this is really important to follow your changing energy as it begins to slow down and really avoid high intensity exercise during this time in order to support your progesterone levels, which are going to be really important for fertility if you're trying to conceive, but also for your period too, because if we're low in progesterone, then that can lead to more PMS symptoms. And so it's really important to support this and just follow intuitively your own energy changes. And so it might be a little bit different for you. You might feel good for quite a bit of this part of your phase. But then, just maybe a couple days before your period, you're starting to have really low energy. So again, going back to the very beginning of this lesson of just checking in with your body of like, okay, where's my energy at today? Like what kind of exercise or movement would actually feel good for me today? And just following that. And so typically you can do things like flow yoga. So, still quite a bit of movement, but not nearly that high intensity that we were doing last phase. You can do weightlifting, but maybe it's just a little bit more gentle. You're not pushing yourself as much. Same with Pilates, dancing, bar, and biking outside. And so, yeah, it's just really important to start to lower your intensity in exercise because you don't want to be adding stress to your body because that's going to knock off your hormones. It's not going to support your fertility, and it can make PMS symptoms worse too. And so just always checking in. And then in terms of mindset, so again, fall is beginning to turn more inward because we're getting ready for our menstruation cycle. And so some feelings that you might be experiencing are things like feeling relaxed, feeling more intuitive, more mindful and aware of things, more grounded, happy. You could also be more emotional, both, good emotion, bad emotion, as well as more creative too. So some actions that you can take on this are completing or wrapping up things. Again, remember in the follicular phase, it was planning. And then in the ovulatory phase, it was taking action on that project or program. And now in the luteal phase, it's wrapping it up. So it's completing it. And so other things are things like cleaning, organizing, decluttering, preparing, questioning, reflecting on things, connecting and slowing down, more creative side of like painting or crafting, as well as bathing. You can do that. Obviously any point in your cycle, but it might feel better even during this part. And starting to set boundaries too. So moving into having your period, you're probably going to want to say no more often to people and not start to focus your energy more inward, especially because it's going to start to lower and you're not going to have as much to project out. So all of this being said, I really just want to do a recap of everything that we went over together in this and sum up the key takeaways that you can remember and focus on. And so in terms of your menstrual phase, really it just comes down to like consuming warm, easy to digest foods, as well as magnesium foods are going to be really helpful for this phase. And then 2, taking rest, a lot of rest during this time, allowing yourself to slow down, having alone time. Then we move to the follicular phase. So the key takeaways here are really loading up on healthy fats and protein, which you're probably already doing, as well as, embracing more exciting exercise and new beginnings in different areas of your life. And then ovulatory phase, really focus on more fibrous foods. So veggies, berries, those kinds of things, maybe cruciferous veggies, favoring high intensity workouts or exercise. So weightlifting, that kind of thing. And just knowing that you're going to feel more confident and outgoing and probably intimate during this time. And then lastly, in the luteal phase, something to focus on is really just more food. So remember, your metabolism is up. It's important to fuel your body with more food, specifically more carbs, sweet potatoes, that kind of thing, as well as those PMS foods too that we went over. And luteal phase, just starting to slow down, measuring your energy, starting to slow down because your period is coming up. So those are the main takeaways of this lesson. And really, I just want you to become more mindful of the flow of your energy and your mood and your desires throughout your cycle, and start to understand that, okay, it's normal and it's healthy for me to have a little bit of these fluctuations, and really just starting to live more in sync and more connection with your cycle. And so those are kind of your takeaways from this lesson. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited for you to try this and connect with your body more.